I was 21 years old when God sanctified me through and through and completely wiped away my will to do my own thing and to focus on Him. But I was 20 years old, and we started with 4 teenagers in this church. And, well, Brian, yes. And Brian looked at me and says, "You're 2 years older than I am. I don't think this is going to work out." I said, "Well, Brian, why don't you come and help me? And I won't be your youth pastor. You'll be my youth helper." "Okay, I'll do that." And that worked out well. But when we left there 2 years ago, we had 25 teens in our youth group. And I have found out since then that at least 2 of them have gone into the ministry full time. And I've found out since then that many have used that experience as the basis for their walk with Jesus and continue to walk with Him. And it's been an amazing experience to look back and see that. And then we moved. I don't know why we moved, but God said it's time to move. And I got out of the ministry for a little bit so I could focus on feeding my family. They decided they wanted to eat every day. And we had little Christopher back then, who was a baby, and Johnny was just coming. And I was in seminary full time. I said, "Okay, what do you want me to do, God?" And He said, "I want you to work at Office Depot." "Why?" "Because it's going to pay your bills and meet your needs. And I want you to focus on that in seminary and raising your family right now." And so I did that for 1.5 to 2 years. And sitting in youth ministry class one night in the seminary, God just said, "Okay, time to get back into it. You're going to find a job as a youth pastor somewhere in the area within the next month." And I was like, "God, it just doesn't work that way. You know that, right?" He said, "Watch me." If you've ever had a question about how God works, whenever He says, "Watch this," hold on, because it's going to happen, and something exciting, something big, something sometimes disturbing is going to happen in your life. And sure enough, within a month, I was a youth pastor at a church, part-time, 20 hours a week, at the same full-time wage that I was getting at Office Depot. Within $8 of my weekly wage at Office Depot, I was making the same at half the hours at the church. God works great, doesn't He? And we were there for 4 years. We started with, I think it was 5 teenagers there. And again, one of them I was kind of curious about because she was in and out, back and forth, and ended up being one of my main supporters in the youth group. Still friends with her on Facebook today. Her name was Sarah. And when we left there 4 years later, God called us back to Oregon. Thank you, Lord, because I did not like Kansas City. It was hot, it was humid, or it was cold, and it was dry. Never got them right. Out here it's cold and humid and hotter and drier. Out there it was the opposite, and I never could breathe. I never could get my hands to quit cracking and all the rest, and I'm just thankful that God called us out. And when we left there, the youth ministry was big, 35 kids. And I'd like to say all of those kids are still walking with the Lord, but the truth is I don't know where a lot of those kids are. But I know that the ones I've reconnected with, the ones that I've talked to, say this is because of the youth ministry that I was a part of, I'm still walking with Jesus today. And that made me feel good. Youth ministry was easy. Could do this all day long. I could play with teenagers and get paid for it. Everybody's like, "How can you work with teens?" I said, I got to go to Colorado. I got to go to Orlando, Florida. I got to go to concerts. I got to go, and they paid me to go. Tell me where the problem with this is. And then we moved to Sheridan, Oregon. And we started there with 6 teenagers. You see, we got to a bigger church each time. It was 4 or 5 and then 6. And we were there for 5 years. And everything was going great until our senior pastor retired. And I got to be the interim pastor for a year and the youth pastor on top of it. And I didn't like that. And then when we got the new senior pastor in, he and I just clicked together so well. Our styles meshed. We had different styles, but they were complementary to each other. And we were having a great time. The youth group was going big. We had 50 kids in our youth group after 5 years. 3 of which are in full-time ministry right now. And I'm really excited about that. And a whole passel of them called me and talked to me and emailed me and Facebook me and all this other good stuff and say, I'm in church. I'm God's child because of the way you introduced him to me. And I was like, youth ministry is easy. I'm doing good, thank you. I didn't break my arm when I patted myself on the back. It's okay. But what did happen is then God said, I want you to go to Seaside. December 26th, 2007. No question in my mind. I drove up here to take my mom back after the Christmas day on the 26th with my dad, and as is my habit, if I see a Nazarene church, I want to pray for it. And there used to be the old Nazarene church down here on 17th Avenue and 101. And it was an ugly green building. You know those the little letters they use in the light up signs, you know, that they can change the letters on? They had those attached to the wall. It said Church of the Nazarene. I mean, it looked hokey. The building was nasty. We looked inside the parsonage, and it was empty. And I was like, what happened to Pastor Ken? He'd been here for 14 years as the pastor in Seaside. And I found out later that he got called away to go to another church. In fact, he went to the church that our senior pastor in Sheridan had come from. He went to Prospect, Oregon. Prospect, Oregon pastor went to Sheridan. And on that day, I found out that the youth pastor from Sheridan is going to go to Seaside. Had a nice continuity and a little bit of symmetry there. And I was like, okay, God, why do you want me to go to Seaside? Everything's going very well here at the church. I've got a good life. I got a nice house. I got everything I've ever dreamed of, literally. And I even preached a youth sermon on, I have everything I've ever dreamed of. What's next for me? And God said, I just want you to continue to working, continue to bring people to Christ. I'm like, yeah, let's go, God. And then he said, oh, and by the way, I want you to go to Seaside, Oregon, and leave everything that you know, everything that you've done, and do something completely different in your life. Okay, so I called the district superintendent, Dr. Healy, and I said, Jim, I don't know, but God's telling me I need to go to Seaside. He goes, go to Seaside. He's been on me for 3 years to become a senior pastor and get out of that youth ministry thing and become a real pastor. And I said, I don't know what's going on. He says, but Seaside, really? I said, Jim, when God speaks, you got to listen. He says, I know, but Seaside, really? He said, let me pray about it. He calls me the next day, says, Seaside, really? Okay. And we started down the journey. And things happened where they closed the old building, they sold the old building. There was no Nazarene church for several months here in Seaside, and they sent us to the New Church University in Dallas, Texas. I was excited. I got to go to Dallas. Never been there before. Don't need to go back. February in Dallas, not nice. It doesn't know if it's winter, spring, summer, or fall. It kind of does all of them throughout the day. And no, it's not like Oregon, trust me. I've been here long enough that it was nothing like Oregon, because it's dusty all the time. But we went to the New Church University, and we prayed about, different things and learned about new things. And we said, well, what's the name of the church going to be? And we looked at each other and said, well, we want a church where people can come in and feel at home. We want tables and chairs and couches and things in our living room or in our sanctuary that would normally be in the living room of a house, things that you would feel comfortable coming in. People want to kick off their shoes. They can kick off their shoes. Nobody's done that so far, I've noticed. Oh, some of the kids have? Okay. But I wanted people to feel at home. What do we call a church that we want people to feel like they're at home? And we looked at each other and almost in the same breath said, welcome home. And we started talking to our group leader, who was our mentor at the time, and we said, well, what do you think about Welcome Home Church? He looked at me and says, I don't think I've ever heard that name before, but I like it. And he went up and he got the leader of the seminar, conference, whatever you call it, and they said, what do you think about this name? Welcome Home Church. He goes, that's not a name of a church. I've never heard that before, but I like it. It's got a good ring to it. It feels good. And we went and researched the name, and we could not find online anywhere a church called Welcome Home Church. So we got to be the very first ones that ever had the name Welcome Home Church. Since then, I found 3 others that have started up with the same name. So I feel like God has not just given us that vision, but he's starting to give other people the same kind of vision of the church.